Okay. I made a mess.
So today, 9 years ago, I officially sent off my last payment to my student loan debt and became officially debt-free. What more of a better way to celebrate this occasion of 9 years debt-free than to go over 7 habits on how to boost debt payoff motivation and to keep that drive going. Even though I did it for 10 months, it was still a grind, and I still want to share that with you. I would say the first major problem that, and I notice this a lot when I look at other people when they're talking either on groups or they're talking in chat rooms or whatever it is, and the major issue that I notice is that there's a constant need to compare yourself with other people's progress. And I know because I'm the same way. I did the exact same thing where even though I paid off $22,000 of student loan debt in 10 months, I look at other people that say paid $40,000, $50,000 in a year and a half. And it's very tempting to want to look at those numbers just from the numbers perspective and try to compare yourself. So the one thing that I've learned to do is to put on blinders, or another one that they're called like horse blinders. There's these little like cups that go on the outside of the horse's eyes, and when they're racing, and what it does is it prevents the horse from getting distracted from crowds and other racers and everything, and it focuses their attention on the goal in front of them. And that's kind of what you're going to need to do when you're paying off debt. It's what I needed to do, because there's a razor edge that you're riding when you start looking at other people's numbers. On one hand, if you haven't started your debt-free journey yet, it's actually a really good motivator to look at what other people have been able to accomplish. They say, oh wow, you paid off $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in 2-3 years. Wow, that's awesome. And if you haven't started a journey yet, it's really motivating to get started. But once you've started, really it would be best if you did not follow a lot of that stuff. It's okay if you can handle it, but it can become very demoralizing when you see other people who might be younger than you, might have more money than you, and might be doing better than you, and it's very easy to compare. The thing that really helped me when I was thinking about this was to realize that everybody's numbers are different, and specifically everybody's situation is different. Your income, your job, your lifestyle, where you live, and that of everybody else is completely different. And by looking at just the numbers, you're gonna get a false sense of real progress. When I was doing my debt payoff journey, it was in 2010, which you gotta remember, this was right after 2008, which is when essentially the entire economy took a massive diarrhea dump on everything. I had to kind of swim along with the currents on that one. So everybody's situation is different. And just because somebody or some other group of people might be doing very well on their journey, that in no way takes away from any progress that you've made. Put on blinders, focus on your goal, on your payoff date, and you'll do great. The second major habit to do when keeping yourself motivated to pay off debt is to always remember your why. This is different from your just a regular goal that you would have. So your goal would be to pay off your debt, but your why is kind of like your vision. It's the ultimate reason that's motivating you for getting out of debt. So maybe you want to change your family tree. Maybe you noticed when you were growing up what it was like to live in poverty. Maybe you didn't have a whole lot of stuff growing up. Maybe you want the security for you and for your family. You want to be able to provide for them and make sure that they're taken care of. Maybe you want the freedom to be able to manage your money in any way that makes you comfortable. And maybe you want to be able to take your family out on vacations. Whatever the vision is the long-term end goal. And each of the individual kind of like the baby steps in the Dave Ramsey system, in this case, baby step 2, those are individual small stepping stones. So it's very important to remember why you're doing this. That's why they call these vision boards and not goal boards. All right, it's about what is the ultimate long-term progression of why you're doing this. One of my favorite quotes, and I can't remember who, what, I think it was a French navigator, I think, or French poet that originally said it, where he said something where it was, if you want to build a ship, you don't get a bunch of people and drum out orders and go over plans and materials, but rather teach them to long for an endless immensity of the sea. And when you remember that immensity of the sea for you and why you're paying off your debt, that motivation will be that much stronger and it'll be much easier to stay on track. All right, the third strategy or the third habit for boosting your debt payoff motivation when things might be a little bit low is to remember to celebrate the little wins. Whether you're doing the debt snowball, which is you list your debts from smallest to largest and you knock them out that way, or you're doing the debt avalanche where you're listing your debts from the largest interest rate down to the smallest, or you're doing any random payoff plan, whatever it is, if you have several different debts, every single time you kill one of those and knock one of them out, be sure to treat yourself to something nice. Nothing extravagant. I'm not saying this is worthy of a trip to Disneyland, but treat yourself, if you like ice cream, or if you like going to the beach, or if you like spending time, in nature or something. Find out whatever your trigger is and use that as a payoff for every time that you knock off one of those debts. Now, for me, I had one giant student loan of $22,000. So what worked for me was I viewed each $1,000 as a floor, and so I would bust through each floor. So I started out on the $22,000 floor, and then I went down, I think, to the $18,000 floor, and then to the $17,000 floor, and then maybe the $15,000 floor. Every time I busted through one of those floors to a new level, I would treat myself to something nice. But it's important, though, to remember to keep celebrating the little wins, which will motivate you, because this is going to be the case no matter what debt payoff plan you have. The fourth habit to helping yourself increase your debt payoff motivation is to surround yourself with debt-free minded people. This is a bit of a tough one, and the reason why is because a lot of times when we're trying to pay off debt, we might have friends and family and coworkers that may not fully understand why we're trying to become debt-free, or they may not even fully appreciate and support that lifestyle because they live in a world where car payments and credit cards and student loans are just a way of life, whereas for someone like you and I, we don't value those things. So it's important to surround yourself with people that do value those things, and I hate to say this because it does sound negative, but at the very least, you may not want to be telling people that don't support this kind of lifestyle that this is what you're doing. This is what happened to me when I first started. Because I started in January of 2010, and I remember telling a coworker, well, I'm going to become debt-free. I'm going to pay off my student loans. And I thought that was going to be like telling someone you wanted to go to college. He was like, hey, cool, I wanted to, better my life and, support myself and everything. And all he did was, he was a good guy and everything, and I still liked him. But he's like, debt-free. He's like, why would you want to do that? Being in debt's the American way. And that took me aback. All right. And so at that point, I kind of decided, okay, you know what? I'm not going to tell anyone else, and I'm just going to kind of keep this as my secret and do things on my own terms. Or another situation that I noticed this on, I think this was on one of the Dave Ramsey forum. I remember there was a woman who posted about she was at her office, and what would happen is like every Friday or so, her coworkers would invite her out for happy hour or to go see a show or something like that. And she told them, like, look, I'm sorry, I'm working this debt-free plan. It's not in the budget right now and I can't do it. But thanks for including me, and maybe next time. And what ended up happening was I guess her coworkers stopped inviting her out because they just figured, well, she's broke and can't do it. And then word started spreading around the office that she was just broke and that she didn't want to hang out with people, and she kind of became this kind of social pariah at her office. People that think like this, the debt-free mindset, are the people that you want to be hanging around with. And with this day and age, with like meetup groups and there's Facebook groups, connect with those people, reach out to those people. And even here on this channel, if you're one of those people, write down in the comments below, say, hey, I'm working on this, and is there anyone in this area, or who can I talk to that is going through this same journey? And I want this to be a community where you can feel completely open and relaxed about sharing what's going on and not have to worry about the judgment of other people. The ultimate litmus test is you should be able to say to people, look, if they invite you out, say, hey, look, thanks, I really appreciate it for the offer, but right now it's just not in the budget. Maybe next time. And then they'll say, hey, that's cool, not a problem. We'll take some pictures for you. Have a good one. We'll see you later. That's it. Number 5, it's okay to be flexible with your debt payoff plan. The hardcore Dave Ramsey folks are going to insist 100% of the time that you do the debt snowball, which is listing your debts from smallest to largest and paying them off in that order. Other folks are going to say that, well, maybe the debt avalanche would be a little bit better. That's where you list your debts from the largest interest to the smallest. And that method might end up saving you some money in interest payments. Or there might even be an alternate method that's completely random. I once asked my doctor what would be the best exercise for me because I was kind of trying to get into getting healthy. And he basically said, anything that elevates your heart rate for 30 minutes a day, that motivates you to keep doing it. So he asked, well, what do you like to do? I said, well, I'm kind of into, I like tennis and like playing tennis and stuff. So he said, okay, well then play tennis for about half hour a day. Because I was thinking, oh, well, what, because this is where the HIIT, H-I-I-T, the high intensity stuff was coming out. What about running or lifting weights? He goes, well, do you enjoy that stuff? I said, not really. He goes, well, then don't do it. It's not a good exercise. If it's not motivating you to do it, then it's not a good exercise, period. So now I do whatever motivates me and I have fun with. And it's the same thing with paying off debt. Whatever method works for you, don't get caught up in the arguments between the snowball or the avalanche method. Pick a method and see how it feels. And if you want to change, that is perfectly fine. There is no obligation to stick to one method or another. Now, let's say that you don't know which method to use and you're confused because you see these other videos on YouTube and you read these articles on, well, should I go snowball or avalanche? And I don't know which one is the best. And what do I do? If you're completely lost, my suggestion would be to start out with the debt snowball and see how that feels for 3 months. And if it's not really working for you and you want to change things around, by all means, feel free to change things around. The thing is, with the snowball and the avalanche method, both of them use psychological triggers. They just use different psychological triggers. So the snowball is using the trigger of motivating you to pay off or paying off the debt by eliminating those small ones and getting those quick wins so that you can want to keep going. The avalanche method uses another psychological trigger of, well, maybe you might realize that saving $6,000 or $7,000 in interest is a huge motivator for you, so that's the one you're going to want to use. Now, the one tip I would strongly recommend, regardless of whether you go avalanche or snowball, and that is if you have an IRS debt, meaning you owe the IRS for back taxes or something like that, I would put that to the front of the line always. Number 6. This is 6 in sign language. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Making sure that you have some form of a visual tracker or a scorecard. When you look at, let's say if you're watching baseball, one of the first things you'll see on the screen is you'll see the innings, you'll see who's up at bat, you'll see, and for them you'll see how many strikes they have, you'll see how many balls he has, and you can get an idea of what the position is and what the situation is just by looking within 5 seconds of that score sheet, of that scorecard. And it's the same thing you need for your debt payoff journey. Now, I've seen some people make some amazing works of art where maybe it's like a thermometer and they'll each little tick is a new floor, like a new $1,000 floor, kind of in the same way. Or maybe they might have a stick of dynamite and there's like a giant fuse that lights up or whatever it is. There's a lot of different trackers out there that you can use that reflect your personality, that are really critical, so that the moment you see it, instantly know where it is and it motivates you to keep going and you can see your progress. I'd almost even as I was thinking of this as I was making the outline script for this video, you could almost even make a game out of this. Like, I'm serious, we get like a tabletop game, right? You could take a giant tabletop and put and you can almost even do it like a fantasy theme where you have like forests and caves and all this other kind of stuff. And then you can make this a family game, right? Where you have your little characters, almost like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. And you're moving along and you have like grids and stuff and you encounter, and here's the thing, all the different monsters that you'd have, those would be all your debts. So you could have goblins and trolls and zombies and werewolves and dragons, and all that stuff could be each of your debts. And here's the thing. So each of those debts would be a specific, or each one of those debts would be a specific monster. If let's say you have a bunch of little like credit cards or something like that, you know, like a little $150, $200, $300 credit cards, that could be like a little horde of zombies, right? Or you could have, I don't know, I'm thinking for a car loan, you have a big old dragon, right? Big old dragon that's flying around or whatever. And you gotta, you know, tackle that thing down bit by bit. You know, if you have medical debt, vampire. Zombie vampire or something, because it's sucking your cash flow. Or a mummy, because it's, you know, got a bunch of bandages. That'd be kind of cool. All right. And this way, what happens is, you know, you can now make a story out of this. It can be a game that makes this interesting and fun. Because you have one person that'll say, you know, you go up to one person and say, okay, well, how'd you pay off your debt? Oh, I used a debt snowball. Cool. Hey, how'd you pay off your debt? I used a debt avalanche. How'd you pay off your debt? Well, we started off in the Enchanted Forest. And we were moving along and we found this dragon. And then all of a sudden we used a spell of invisibility and we got rid of it. That's like you sold your car. And then we kept moving along and there was a horde of zombies and we took them out bit by bit. And then there was one that was leeching on real quick because he wanted us to stick around, but we finally kicked him off and got a critical hit. And which brings up to my next point. If you do overtime, if you do extra, if you get somehow your side hustles, if you are able to get any kind of extra money in, that would be like a, you know, like a critical hit or a crushing blow or something like that. And you were able to really nail that guy out and kill that debt, right? And then you have like a little graveyard of all the debts afterwards. And you got these little gargoyles and zombies or whatever, you know, and they're just kind of sitting in there. And then you're moving along in the forest, and there was this castle. And we came across the castle, and inside the castle there was this treasure, but it was guarded by the Citibank serpent. And we had to kill the Citibank serpent, and he was kind of tough. But we pulled in some overtime, and we got some good crushing blows in, and we took him out in 2 months' time ahead of schedule. And then we went inside and we found these treasure chests. And we opened the treasure chest and we could choose one. And inside the treasure chest was maybe donuts, or maybe a family outing or a family barbecue at the beach. Right? So now you're celebrating those little wins because you made a victory. But now you're making a game out of this. Someone needs to do this, seriously. And here's the thing: it doesn't even have to be fantasy related. Like, hey, you could set this in a futuristic apocalyptic world, and you've got, you know, mutated, you know, creatures and stuff, and those are your debts. You could set it in the Ghostbusters universe. You could set it in a Western type kind of thing, and you've got gunslingers or whatever it is. You can literally do anything. You can literally make a game out of this and make it fun, and let it become a story for not just you, but also for your family. But the main point, okay, is to have some kind of a tracker that you're able to follow your progress on your debt freedom journey and see how much longer you're going to reach to get till you finally hit your next goal and milestone. Number 7, make sure that your habits and the things that you're actually doing to pay off your debt and reaching your financial goals will ultimately have long-term effects. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're trying to pay off your debt within a certain time frame. Whatever it is that you do, maybe you cut back spending in a certain area, maybe you start increasing your income by doing a certain kind of side hustle, or you start opening up maybe an eBay shop or something like that. Whatever it is that you do, you want to do behaviors that are going to lead to that long-term lasting effect and not short-term effects. This is kind of me saying, don't do no-spend challenges. I know there are some folks out there that swear by no-spend challenges. I am not one of them. The main reason is because any benefits that you would gain from the no-spend challenge, like you're saving money, you say, I'm not going to spend money on coffee this month. If the next month you turn around and just start spending money on coffee again, you've effectively canceled what you would have done. Instead, focus on things that will have a long-term effect by focusing on goals that change your behaviors permanently. So if your goal is to become debt-free, and you want to start reducing your expenses, well, start reducing your expenses and keep that continual for the entire time. If you're going to cut back on coffee, great. But don't just cut back on coffee for 1 month. Or if you're going to cut back on sugar, or if you're going to, I call these restriction challenges. And a lot of times people end up going back to the very thing that they restricted themselves from when they first started. So if you're going to cut back on coffee, fine, but let that be a permanent thing. From now on, you're cutting back on coffee. So instead of $100 a month, if you happen to be doing that, and you cut back, say, to $10 a month because you're buying this stuff at home, or you're buying it, you're bringing it home, and you're making it at home, great, do that. But don't then turn around and go, okay, well, I saved 80, 90 bucks on coffee this month. I think next month I'll go ahead and stop spending money on shopping, but then go back to the coffee. And any benefit spending-wise that you would gain from that, you can do if you set more lofty goals. So if your goal is, okay, I'm going to pay off $50,000 in debt, or my goal is to raise my net worth by $30,000, that's going to require certain strategies and behaviors that you would have gained anyway had you done a no spend challenge. But this time, because your goal is much loftier, it's going to carry through to the end of the goal. So if you're trying to raise your income, you're trying to double your income within a couple years, whatever it is that you're doing, maybe you're getting more clients, maybe you're making more calls, maybe you're adding more listing to your eBay store, you're going to continue doing that. You're not just going to do something for 1 month and then stop. Happy Halloween to everyone. Hope you have a really great time tonight. If you have little ones going out, make sure that you check their candy and everything whenever they get it back, and be sure to go ahead and take out 15 to 20%, call it the mom and dad tax. Got to start them off early on how the economy really works, right? So have a good one. I will talk with you guys later. Take care.